Old worlds, new worlds, third world, new economies, old earth, global warming. We label and we slogan our understanding as we strive as humans must to exist, to provide, and to succeed. But the truth is, the planet hasn't grown, the population has. And how do we accommodate even more growth with the resources, tools, and knowledge that we have and we hope to still achieve? That's the human side of what at first sounds like a very esoteric topic, but sustainability may be the primary challenge of the early 21st century and even beyond. Please welcome someone who's going to tell us more about that, BethBeloff. Beth?
Thank you. I want to share with you my story about how I became passionate about sustainable development. You might wonder, passionate about sustainable development? But this is my story, and it's true. So imagine, there I was, stranded deep in the Amazon rainforest in the southern end of Ecuador with no food or water, and it felt like about 130 degrees in the shade. I was not on the Survivor show, and I wasn't sure that I would ever see my family again, truly. The rest of our small group had just left by this dugout canoe to go downriver to a small cut in the jungle and to leave by a light plane that was coming in to pick them up. With them was this man, the shaman of the Shuar tribe with whom we had been staying. He had just had a stroke shortly after I took this photograph, and we were now putting him on the plane that was coming for us to fly him to the nearest hospital, which was not at all very close, and to try to save his life. But not all of us could fit on that plane, and so we drew straws. 3 women, myself included, drew the short straws, and we had to stay behind, waiting to see when that plane might be able to return. Here we were with the Shuar tribe in the jungle. The Shuar were known to be among the fiercest warriors of all of the indigenous tribes of the Amazon. They had been warm and inviting when we had first arrived, but now they were wary, even hostile, wondering who among us had done this to their shaman. And now, as we stood there in the jungle alone, they melted back into the forest. We knew that they could see us, but we couldn't see them. Okay. They were known as the head shrinkers of the Amazon, and this is in fact a Shuar shrunken head. They were the only indigenous tribe in the world known to actually practice the art of shrinking heads. And you might ask, why would they shrink a head? And in fact, somebody yesterday asked me, did they kill the person? So yes, they killed the person and then shrank their heads. And this was their solution to unsustainable thoughts that undermined the sustainability of their community. And now we were wondering if we would keep our heads. And to make matters worse, we knew that there was a thriving black market in Shuar shrunken heads. I reflected on what I had seen over the preceding 10 days, sleeping on a banana leaf around the fire in the hut of the shaman, drinking chicha, which is their brew made from saliva that the women spit into a spittoon after chewing plantain. I was looking for an understanding of what sustainable development meant to this remote tribe. And I was going to take that understanding back with me to Houston to share with oil executives whose exploration activities upstream of these tribes were impacting the habitats and the tribes like the Shuars that depended on the forest. I heard the cry of a jaguar, which was a very unusual sound even for the Shuar to hear, and it made me weep. Not because I was afraid, and yes, I was fearful, but rather it was a reminder to me that it was in danger of survival in this changing forest far more than I was. I discovered the incredible web of life, connections in the rainforest, all visceral, all visible. Plant waste falling to the floor of the jungle, attracting a multitude of insects, cutter ants working 24/7 to haul it off to their homes. The insects attracting frogs, and the frogs attracting snakes, and the snakes attracting birds, and so on. The death of one prolonging the life of the other. In the jungle, there is no waste. Waste is food. It's all one big circle. The interconnections are visceral, and the way the Shuar lived was totally compatible with that forest. They took what they needed from the forest and no more, and they protected the rest for the 7th generation. And that's what a lot of indigenous people talk about. That is far into the future generations. But they were issuing a warning to us about the future. The shaman had foreseen dry, caked earth where this forest stood. Our practice is worlds away, he said, and he had never been to those worlds away. We're endangering them and us. We needed to change the way we behaved. And so I reflected on what sustainability meant to the Shuar. And it's about interlocking, interconnected systems, starting with the individual, equally important to the family, equally important to the community, equally important to that concept of 7th generation. Let's keep this around for our children's 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 children. And that's the social fabric. But that social fabric is embedded in the environment, critically important to the survival of that community. And in between the environment and that social fabric is their economic activity, their livelihoods that mediated between the needs of the community and the resources from the environment. And those are all linked. Those are all interdependent for the Shuar. And I did, in fact, make it out of that rainforest, but I was haunted by what the shaman had said. And I began to realize that what the Shuar believed, that our thoughts are that powerful, was in fact true. So I thought about that teak patio furniture that I had just bought, and I wondered, had it really caused that? Had it come from a clear-cut rainforest somewhere in the world? And I thought about the gasoline that then in the mid-90s I had just purchased from Texaco. And I wondered if I had in fact supported the oil exploration practices that had been polluting the rivers in that Amazon forest where I had stayed with oil and endangered indigenous tribes from around the Amazon. And it was that environmental degradation that brought out the largest in history, the largest protest of indigenous tribes from all over the Amazon to protest those actions. Our actions in the developed world affect others in the developing world. There is a stunning ripple effect. So I felt the urgency that we must do something. This is serious. That web of life which makes up our system is unraveling. And sustainability, what I learned in the rainforest, is not just isolated to the rainforest. It's about the whole system. It's interconnected, it's interdependent, and the system is the planet. I'm sure many of you, most of us in this room, remember our childhoods when we were in an empty world, where nature was so vast compared to humans. And today it feels like we're in a full world where humans are dominant and nature is, in fact, so small and we affect it in every way. So I wondered, how large is our footprint? It feels huge. How large is it, in fact? And I was quite surprised by the answer. I discovered the ecological footprint concept, which calculates the amount of land that the world's countries need to produce the resources that they use and absorb the wastes that result. And here, if you look along the y-axis, you see numbers of Earths in terms of land needed. And what is surprising about this chart is that around 1987, we hit that line of one Earth. We overshot Earth's capacity. We hit it. That was 20 years ago. Houston, we have a problem. Furthermore, our footprint more than tripled since 1961. We have gone to a more than full world. We're using up resources faster than the planet can regenerate them and absorb the waste streams. And worse, if everybody were to live like we do in the U.S., we would either need to shrink the global population to 1.2 billion, which is, I think you would agree, unconscionable, or we would need to find 4.5 more planet Earths. Think about that. Think about 5.5 planet Earths. We have been searching for another planet that is like this somewhere in the universe, and we haven't found it yet. We've tried to replicate this in biosphere. It failed. And worse, we've exported our addiction to stuff to the developing world. China is trying to catch up. The Earth simply cannot support our choices any longer. So why do we care? Why does it matter? I care deeply about my children and their future and the problems they will face. I'm certain you do. And I care about their children, my grandchildren. I know that none of us would intentionally harm our children. Why should we care for all the other species on the planet for whom there is no land? They're getting squeezed out. Their long-term survival is in danger. And what's at stake is the magic and the criticality of these places everywhere on the planet. Nature is priceless, and it has no price, which is why it's taken for granted. But the life-supporting services that it provides that we all know, carbon sequestration, oxygen generation, and so on, are critically important. And then there's the intrinsic value. Think about the magic and the inspiration and the poetry and invention that comes from nature. So what does sustainable development mean? It has many names: sustainable development, sustainability, corporate social responsibility. Regardless of the name, it's all about growth that's ethical. And the question is, how do we grow our economies or grow our businesses without harming the environment while ensuring social fairness, both now and into the future, for that seventh generation? It's about, for companies, the triple bottom line. It's about people, planet, profits, but it's about optimizing all three. It's not trading them off. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We merely are borrowing it from our children. That means something profoundly to me. And the opposite of sustainability is extinction. Let me put this in context. The U.S. has 5% of the world's population, yet we use 25% of the resources. And the rest of the world knows that this is not equitable. We do have a problem. We would need to protect about 25 acres of U.S. forests per year to neutralize our carbon footprint per person in the U.S. Think about that, 25 acres per person. And 40% of that is attributable to the way we live our daily lives. 60% of that indirectly comes from the products that we use. That is huge. That's a huge carbon footprint. And Ed, this is for you. We have challenges ahead. We have serious challenges regarding climate change that you're hearing about on a regular basis. Doing nothing can ensure that the future will be bleak. That is what we are hearing. So let me show you how the industrial growth system that we are a part of and that we helped create works. It starts with consumption. Remember when President Bush told us after 9/11 the most patriotic thing we could do was to go out and shop. The system is based on starting there. But what we don't see is upstream, the whole chain of consumption that goes into the products that we end up buying. So extraction of raw materials, production of product, packaging, distribution, then we see it. And then downstream, the waste disposal aspects of the products that we have. And we don't know the amount of resources that are going into that product, the material, energy, water, thank you, land, that go into it, or the waste streams that come out. 99% of the material in product from that chain becomes waste within 6 months. And developing countries are modeling themselves after what we do. We have a consumption problem, and our path is unsustainable. Our supply and quality of natural resources and ecosystem services is diminishing, while the demand for them is only increasing as the population grows, as economic development increases, and as consumption increases, resulting in social equity, social stability problems, pollutant effects, political pressure to do more in a narrowing space. We need to shift from an industrial growth system that depends on the consumption of natural resources to one built around a life-sustaining system. We hear we can't afford to protect this. I would argue we can't afford not to. Why should we act when the developing world doesn't act first? We are the leaders in this. We need to take a leadership role. Or we can fix the problem with technology. That has to be part of the solution, but it can't be all of it. Is there any reason for hope? I painted a bleak picture. I will postulate 4 reasons for hope. 1, public awareness is increasing. Sustainability is finally in the mainstream as a concept, and it's being driven in many ways by climate change. The climate change issue in the last year has come on everybody's radar screen. Why? Because we're seeing the effects of climate change, because Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth has mainstreamed it, and because he's put the message forward that scientists since 1950 have been trying to tell us that this is a serious threat to our existence. 2, business is taking action. Companies are recognizing the climate change issue is not only a risk to their business, it is also an opportunity for their success. Fortune's America's Most Admired Companies, interestingly in 2007, the top 3 have all been rebranded around sustainability issues. GE, Eco-Imagination, is not just a slogan, it's a mission, and it's driving their clean technology development. Toyota, for its hybrid vision and technology, which it's leasing to U.S. automakers. Starbucks, for its green and fair trade ethical labor practices in its supply chain. And all businesses are finding that they can do well, that they can achieve some of these benefits, bottom line, top line, of doing well by doing good. Walmart, you're hearing how Walmart is greening its supply chain and beginning to provide low-cost health benefits. 3, clean tech investing is becoming more circular. Clean tech development is taking waste, toxics, carbon out of the system and reducing resource use, making this more like nature, waste to food. And the investment dollars are increasing, and what's going into this system is human ingenuity, and what's coming out are benefits, financial, social, environmental. But is business moving fast enough? In my practice, I see that business is talking the talk. They're understanding the what and why. But without passion of a passionate leader, it's very hard to embed this deep into an organization. The company doesn't walk the talk if there's not passion. And companies aren't passionate, people are. So this leads me to the fourth reason for hope, and that's you. That's you. You're the leaders of tomorrow. You're the leaders of today. You're smart people. You would do anything to protect your children today and tomorrow. You know that our thoughts are powerful. Adopt a new way of thinking. You can decide what planet your children will inherit by the choices you make through your buying power. Think differently. It starts with seeing the world differently. Realize that we are all in this together. It's not me, it's us. And make those impacts visible. Don't allow them to stay invisible. Know that our local actions affect us globally and that we will either pay now or pay later. We can't escape the payment, and it will cost more later. Think about your children. Reward companies that begin to screen products. They're not perfect, but it's a start. Whole Foods with its organic and locally grown produce, Home Depot sustainably grown forested woods, Patagonia recycled Coke bottles in their clothing. But ask questions. Buy smarter products. Make it visible. Make it circular. Buy products that use fewer resources, less energy, less packaging, less water, less waste. Recycle. Use renewable energy. Make the system visible to you. Energy is a good starting point. Why? Because it's half of the footprint. Because the production of energy is, in fact, linked to global warming emissions, to water use, toxic emissions, other environmental problems, and you save money when you save energy. It's that proverbial win-win we're all looking for, and there is a ripple effect from that action. So in conclusion, I ask you to please take action. Recognize that every decision you make has consequences. Measure your footprint. Know what your impacts are. At least take that first step and then make choices based on that knowledge. Reduce that footprint. Offset what you can't reduce. Share your ideas with others. Share them with your family, with your community. Share them with your business. Change your businesses. And vote your conscience. Make it a nonpartisan mandate. This isn't about liberal. It isn't about conservative. It must not be a partisan mandate. Help shape a new sustainable world for our children. Be part of the solution. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Well, I hope you haven't lost your optimism about the world. That was sobering, but also I think ended on a hopeful note, something that we can do.